This is Rhea, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics, including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more.
The post-holiday people. Today we're going to talk with Miss Cindy about celebrating independence as a widow/widower.
I'm really excited about this because I have a 12-week program that is all about building up confidence and independence. So I got talking points galore here.
Perfect. Yeah, I was like, because for July, my focus is independence. And I was like, who better to talk about this with than someone who, essentially you focus on, one of the things you kind of focus on in general is independence as a person from your grief.
Right.
And so, I was like, this couldn't have been a more perfect matchup. So that makes it even more perfect.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about celebrating or celebrating and or practicing independence from your grief as a widow or widower. And it really it can apply to all types of people. Independence from your grief, it doesn't necessarily have to be from losing a spouse. It can be just losing anyone in general. However, I want to specifically focus on widows and widowers today, since that's what your focus is. Yeah. But, if it doesn't apply to you in that particular manner, hopefully it still can apply to you, the listener, in some other kind of way. But
yeah, I think anybody who's grieving anyone can benefit by feeling more in control of themselves, to know who they are and feel independent. Because if we're grieving somebody that we loved dearly, we were slightly dependent on that person, not necessarily for day-to-day things, but for their friendship, for their love, we depended on that. And that's gone. We don't get those daily reminders or, that kind of thing. So we have to figuring out who we are separate from that person can really help us get through the grief. I mean, we're still going to be sad. We're still going to miss them.
Right.
But we'll be stronger and better able to face the world.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you've taught me, grief isn't something that you can just magically fix. It really is something that you have to follow a process from. It kind of reminds me in a way of like a 12-step program. You can't just follow 4 of the 12 steps and be like, oh, I'm better. You have to go through this process, and it's not always a smooth, consistent process, but you have to allow yourself,
very messy,
in a healthy way, you have to allow yourself to go through the process, or you're not going to be successful. You can't successfully get through it if you don't, in a healthy way, go through the process.
It can be a very messy process, and it doesn't go in the same order for everyone.
Right.
And sometimes you take 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards, but then other times you'll take 5 steps forward. So
yeah,
the more you realize, the more you understand your feelings and what's normal, and pretty much everything is normal that you feel. I'm not going to say any feeling is bad, because it's what you feel. It's your reality.
Yeah. I think that's important to point out too, that while having expectations for success and for progress, it's almost unrealistic to have expectations for your grief, and specifically in a certain way. Like, okay, I expect it to go this way. I haven't lost a spouse, but I've lost friends, relatives to murder, natural causes, a variety. And although, my father and I spent a lot of time not super close due to addiction and things like that, his death affected me I didn't expect it. Like, my expectations for my grief were much different than reality because like Father's Day rolled around and I was having panic attacks at one point. Well, I had been doing, I think it was like a whole month, no panic attacks. So now my expectation is, all right, cool. Like because my grief was a big part of my panic attacks, figuring out through therapy and things like that, it was a big, even though it's like, okay, this stuff happened, I know about it, I thought I processed it, my expectation was like, all right, cool, I'm over it. And then Father's Day rolls around, I had 4 panic attacks in one day. Didn't even realize the relation until I'm like on social media and I see posts and I'm like, feel myself getting like, and I'm like, what is happening? Why do I feel like this again?
Yeah.
My expectation was much different than reality. And then I, come to realize like, oh, like, okay, maybe stay off social media because this is super triggering for me. Because clearly I'm not over it, quote unquote, like I thought it was. So
Yeah, and I think you realize now that you don't get over it. You just get to a point where you can manage it better.
right,
There's
very
still
much
gonna
so.
be triggers. There's still going to be, random triggers, that you can't even, like you said, you hadn't made the connection that it was Father's Day.
Yeah.
Somewhere in your brain, you knew.
I feel like my brain was trying to like keep me away from it in a sense though, because like I knew it was Father's Day. I always have the kids make my husband something, make sure the girls make their dad something. So I had all that situated, but hadn't even considered that like, oh, this one's gonna be a doozy.
Yeah.
you know.
And next Father's Day, you may be fine, or you might not. There's
Yeah.
no way to predict. The best way is to just be prepared to have a plan in place
Mm-hmm.
for taking your mind off it or dealing with it. I had a woman, her husband's been gone since February, I think, and their anniversary was last week, and or over the weekend actually, and she was really nervous about how it was going to be. And in talking with her, she and her children have done a wonderful job of dealing with his death. They planted a garden in his memory, and on special days they plant a new flower or something. It's a flower garden. And so I said, plant a flower in his honor. Do something that you would do as a family.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared though that might be triggering, and you've got to, okay, back up from that.
Yeah.
You just tell the kids, we're going to try this. If it's too hard, we'll do something else. And I said, even eat a special meal. So she did. They started to go on a hike because they love to hike, but then storms came. Somebody sent her a bouquet of flowers, and from him.
Oh.
And yeah, she said, and it was exactly the way he would have picked it out. The card was exactly the way he would have written it. She thinks it was his family, but she took the flowers and went to, took them to his grave, and so honored him that way. And then they had a cookout once the storms passed, and she said he loved bratwurst, but there was one that she'd been really wanting to try because it had pepper jack in it.
Uh-huh.
But he couldn't eat it because he had stomach issues with
Oh.
that. So she had bratwurst in his honor and ate what he couldn't because he didn't have to feel guilty because he was, eating it in front of him. So things went much better than she expected because she had plans. She
Yeah.
had, I mean, not necessarily plans that you have to follow exactly,
Yeah.
but ideas that, okay, I'll try this. And if it makes me worse, I'll move on to something else,
Right.
and it's always helpful to do that. For me, I just realized yesterday that August 2nd is next month. And
Yeah.
that's the date my husband died and my father as well. And I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I don't know. I kind of think I'm going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
but because I've been okay this whole, usually between Mother's Day and August 2nd, I'm all over the place. And I've been pretty steady. I've been doing pretty good.
Have you been
So,
taking your own advice?
well, it'll be 12 years and they just like, wow. In some ways it feels like it's been forever. And in other ways it feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of, I don't have a plan yet, but I'll figure something out for the day. If I'm having a bad day, I'll try something. If I'm having, I'll have a plan in place. And I think I am going to stay off social media as much as I can that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know my brothers are going to post things and that's,
And it goes back to like, and that's okay for them to do, right?
oh
Because
yeah, I'm not going to ask them not to.
right. And that's something I kind of wanted to point out too, that having expectations for other people in your grief, it's dangerous because we can't control what is successful and unsuccessful for other people. Just because, like for me, I chose to stay off social media. My sister and my stepmom, they posted a lot on social media. That was helpful for them. And so I'm, wasn't mad at them for like, why do they keep, like at first when I noticed it, I was like, oh, I think because I keep seeing their post on my timeline, that was triggering for me. However, that was me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go to them and be like, why are you posting? Stop posting it. Da, da, da. Like, like it's their fault that I am getting upset because it's not. That's me. And for them, so they have different ways of dealing with things. My stepmom, she posts a lot around Father's Day. I'm sure around his birthday, things like that. Maybe their wedding anniversary. You know, and also for them too, like they were around him a lot more. Their experiences with him were different than mine. My sister, she's 7 years younger than me. So, and then, she always lived down there with him. Her experience is going to be totally different, no matter how much pain she went through because of the addiction and things like that. She still has memories. She still has experiences. She still has things that she wants to keep alive. And
Yeah.
I respect that.
There were good times too.
Yeah.
And
So
with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to point out too, not to hold against people how they choose to remember the deceased spouse or family member. It's okay to be okay with how other people handle things and kind of remember that we all handle stuff differently. You can have a set of twins in the same room, they have two different perspectives, can have can have two separate emotions. It's it's okay.
Yeah. And it's being able to separate yourself from somebody else's grief
Right.
is part of independence, right?
Yes.
You're independent of their grief. And if you know that posting online is going to be, reading other people's posts is going to be triggering. Stay off social media. And I kind of, my social media, my Facebook timeline, I think it's a day or two off because I see things that were posted yesterday or the day before.
Me too.
And
Sometimes it's like a week ago. I'm like, huh?
I'd rather they just go back to the very beginning when they just posted it chronologically.
Yes.
Anyway, so I know that if I feel that it's gonna be triggering, I just won't go on for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Or I'll just go to my notifications and maybe not notifications from family members.
Yeah. Yeah.
And independently, behind the scenes, I'll probably tell them I need to stay off of it.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind that I'm not liking your posts or whatever. I said, I just, I don't want to see it this year.
Right.
And that's good for anybody to do.
Yeah.
Let the other person know that you're fine with them posting. Or if you're the one that wants to be public about it all and post about it because the things other people say back to you make you feel good.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
They'll say, I'm praying for you, I'm thinking of you. And it makes you feel better to have that support. And if that's what they want, if that's what you want to do, make sure to let other family members or people that were, close, let them know that that's what you're going to do, and tell them it's okay if you don't interact, if you just
Right.
ignore. It's fine.
Yeah.
And because everybody's feelings are different. Everybody processes grief differently, and we process it differently at different times.
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's super important to point out. Everybody processes differently.
Yeah.
And so
The stages of grief don't go in an order. They
yeah.
don't go in any kind of order. The original reason for the stages of grief were the stages that somebody who has been told they're terminal goes
Mhm.
through about their own death. And there it is more or less linear. But, it's been adapted and adopted for people who are grieving. And it all depends. I mean, sometimes there's 5. Somebody else says there's 7 stages. I had like 12 that I listed at one time. So,
Yeah.
nothing goes in order, and everything you feel is okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, having a support system too, whether it's online, whether it's in person or over the phone. A support system can be really helpful during times when you're having a rough time, during an anniversary, a birthday, these special days. Obviously, a support system is important in the early days.
Right.
But even 3, 6 months out, a year, it's nice to know that there's somebody that you can turn to and say, I'm just missing him awful today.
Yeah.
Or this reminded me of him. Can I talk about it?
Mhm.
And I think having someone that you can do that with is really good. It's beneficial for you. It may be beneficial for them. Or maybe your support person didn't know the other one, and they can be completely objective and be completely there for you.
Right. So that's something that I wanted to kind of speak on a minute too, and put on my psychology and mental health hat. Having someone who is separate from the situation. because you know, talking with a family member or a friend who is kind of sharing in your grief journey it can be helpful, right? Because you have someone who knows what you're going through. However, personally, I think that having someone who is just for you is important, because someone who's simultaneously going through their own grief journey, they need affection and assistance and things too. And sometimes when we're trying to, it's like me trying to help my sister through our grief. I did this in the beginning. I was like, all right, shut off your personal feelings, focus on her. You know, she was there with them more and all these things. And I didn't really feel like I had.
Well, then there needs to be a give and take on both
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah.
And if that's not there, like if you're the one that they're pouring their heart out to, but you don't feel for whatever reason that you can do the same with them,
Yeah.
it definitely helps to have somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's also not healthy to shut off your own grief so
Oh,
that you can help someone else.
That's what I
Um,
did.
And I know it's a thing that people do, especially if, you know, like I said, you're an older sibling, you're a parent, you know, kind of thing. And you're like, okay, this person needs the grief more, if that makes sense.
I'm the responsible one. I've got
Yes, I need to
my
make this
feelings in
better.
control.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
that's your feelings. You may think your feelings are in control, but they're there.
Yeah.
They're gonna come
Yeah.
out at some point.
Right. And if you're not taking care of yourself too, they're going to come out. It's going to be much more difficult when it finally does come out
If
for
you
you to
don't,
manage.
if you don't have somebody that's just there for you, or you feel like you're taking advantage of them or something, there are other things you can do. You can journal.
Mhm.
Journaling, writing out your feelings is wonderful. You can write and then tear it up, so
Yeah.
nobody ever sees it. Whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, you
Yeah.
write it out on a Word document and then delete it. Or you could save it to look back on and say, oh, okay, I've come a ways since that day. There's a lot of online support groups.
I was going to say that too. I
I
feel like,
have one for widows and widowers.
yes, I want to point that out too. I think that's something important to kind of bring awareness to, because you know, a lot of people don't have the funds or don't think they have the funds to put into their mental health care. But there are free resources. There's a hotline, there's, you know, Facebook groups, there's free website resources. And then there are some things that you have to pay for, therapy and coaching and things like that,
And
which,
a lot of times insurance will pay for therapy.
yes.
I mean, not maybe it'll only pay for like 9 sessions or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take advantage of it, In
Yeah.
fact,
Even,
take
yeah.
advantage of it at the end of the year. And then then you get the, the 9 again at the beginning of the year. So
Yeah. Spread it out, you know.
And a lot of employers, especially the larger ones, they have their EAP, Employee Assistance Program.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of those will involve therapy. It
Mhm.
may just be talking to somebody on the phone once or twice, but that may be all you need.
Right. Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of there, and I'll put some in here, but there's a lot of a lot of free resources. Also, another issue, sometimes people, they don't have transportation, or they're just kind of too in it to want to go out into the world and talk to a stranger. They don't want to leave their house. You know, people go through intense times during grief. Sometimes they don't want to leave. They don't want to go
Yeah.
anywhere.
I'm a hermit.
There's a lot of things on, you can pretty much do anything through the internet today. And online resources are definitely a thing. So if you're someone who you don't have the confidence, or the I can't think of words. You don't want to go out and
Right.
see somebody. You don't want to be face to face. For
Feeling
whatever
very
reason.
introverted.
Yes, yes. I know my husband would much more prefer to talk to a therapist on the computer or the phone than to go into an office. I'm a super social person. I'm fine with going to an office. Um, I drive all day long anyway, so whatever. But there are people who don't. So sometimes it's helpful to have the security of your personal space to talk to this person in. And there are so many online resources where you don't even have to go anywhere.
Google is your friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, with me, the first call is always free anyway. So, if all you need is just one call, we might be able to fix it. I can give you some ideas and
Yeah, yeah.
or and
Sometimes it's not knowing where to start, or thinking that things are going to be this certain way, and then you get in the midst of it and you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, this is more than I can handle. It's important to, like you said, even if it's just one call to say, oh, okay, this isn't gonna go how I planned it, and that's normal. That's okay. Okay. Now I feel a little bit better knowing that
I
my
have
plan, it's
I have
okay if it's not going my way.
I have a group coaching, and we meet on Wednesdays and online.
Mhm.
And one woman asked me, her husband died in January, and she moved out of her home. She sold her home, or maybe they were renting, whatever. She moved out of there and moved in with a family member. So she downsized a lot.
Um,
Her she felt that her experience was different than the others because she doesn't have that daily reminder walking into the room, where the person died or something.
right.
But now she's got pictures of him and they're all out where she can see them. But if she's not focusing on the picture, she can't remember his face. It's getting blurry.
My
And
husband, yeah.
it's really, it happens. And don't beat yourself up about it. It's not that you're forgetting them. It's not that you don't love them anymore. It's that your life is taking shape, and you don't need that constant picture of him in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your brain telling you it's okay,
Okay. Yeah.
you can move forward, you can do things.
Yeah.
And I think with her too is she's met somebody. So she's really feeling bad about not having his space in her brain. And
Gotcha.
I said, yeah, he's not taking place of him, is he? And she said, oh God, no.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I remember when my husband told me that it's like I'm starting to forget what my mom looked like. And for me being on the outside, I remember clearly, I was like, what? That was so crazy to me. Um, because although like my ADHD brain, it's good that I can't remember dates because it makes it easier on like certain anniversaries. I don't even know what day it is, that it's that day,
No.
but I can remember faces very well. So I was like, what? Like, I didn't say this to him. And I was like, how you're forgetting your mom's face? How did, but it's no different than me forgetting what day my father passed, or, I mean, it's just because we have different brains, we process things differently. What
And
may seem odd to me, something else that I do, or, that I forget, you can't remember the day he, no, that's probably odd to someone else, like it's it is what it is.
It's no different than, say, you've gone 6 months without seeing them
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you start, you kind of forget. With my mother, all I have to do is look in the mirror. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm looking like her every day. I look more and more like her. Or listen to my voice, my recorded voice.
Really?
Because yeah, there are times when oh my God, that's my mother talking. And not the words, it's the tone of voice and all,
Yeah.
voice itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that happens with a lot of women, with their mothers. They start to once in a while, I kind of see my father in me, but I got his eyes.
Oh yeah. He said that too. Because we were talking about him kind of forgetting, but then he's like, but then it is like the eyes and certain features of his. He's like, when I look at myself, then I start to kind of remember her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard when you're not blood related to somebody.
Yeah.
And you start to their face gets a little fuzzy. Most of the pictures in my head, if I close my eyes and picture my husband, most of them are copies of pictures.
Really?
Yeah, well, it's been 12 years and that's all I've seen of him.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, there is little things will remind me of him that come out of the blue. We were driving, my one son, who's built very much like his father,
Uh-huh.
he was driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat and I was on my phone checking my email or whatever. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see his leg. And it just, the leg to the gas pedal. And my husband and I spent a lot of time in the car. Whenever he had a day off, he wanted to go driving somewhere.
Sounds like me.
And I mean, we discovered a lot of Virginia that way, even in New York State before we moved. But I caught the glimpse of Connor's leg and it just kind of jolted me for a minute because it felt like I was sitting in the car with Dan.
Yeah.
And after 12 years, I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
So that was a little weird, but things like that, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was actually kind of nice when it first hit, because oh, and then it was like, yeah, but it's not him. But it's my son, so that
Yeah.
that's good. So things come up, and they always do. And when that things may come out of the blue and something like that happens, you don't have to ask yourself, is that normal? Am I weird for feeling that way? Nope. It may
Right.
not be normal for, this person, but it's normal for you. It's okay for you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are other widows out there who look at their sons and think, God, he reminds me of his father, or, they say something that reminds them. I'm not the only one. There are plenty of, so I know,
Yeah.
it's okay. Everything you feel is okay.
Yeah. It's important to remember
Yeah,
that
so
specifically,
sad.
like everything you're going through is okay. As long
And
as you are approaching it in a healthy manner, everything you're going through is okay.
And knowing that gives you a sense of strength, a sense of power. The more you use your grief to grow, you become stronger, you become more resilient because you can bounce back from anything,
Right.
because you already have. And even if, the death of a parent or the death of a child or a good friend, after a while, you do start to feel a little better. And after longer, you feel even better. And when you use that, when you look back and go, okay, I've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
When you use that, it boosts your confidence, it boosts your self-esteem, it makes you stronger, and you can do anything. You give an empowered widow a task, and she's going to do it better than anybody else because she knows it can be done. There's no impossibilities anymore.
Right, right.
And if it fails, oh well, what's the worst that can happen? The worst is already happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, you can really grow. People think I'm weird when I say you can grow from your grief, but you can.
Yeah.
There's power in pain, in recovering from that horrible pain in the beginning. Sometimes you have to walk through fire
Yeah.
to get to the good.
Yeah.
I'm using all kinds of cliches.
But it's true. You have to get through the tough part.
Yeah. And as you learn to do, especially if it was somebody, if a spouse, or like if it was a parent and you lived in the house with that parent, or they did say your father was a mechanic and he always fixed your car. Well, he's not there to fix it now. So what do? Once you figure out, either learn to do it yourself or find somebody who can do it that's trustworthy, find a good garage, you ask people, you get advice, you do it, and
Right.
you proud of yourself that you took. Don't think, oh, I had to ask 4 people, no, you asked 4 people and you followed their,
Right.
and
You put yourself out there 4 times.
it's
Yeah.
it's a change of mindset. You're not a victim.
Mhm.
Their death didn't happen to you personally.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't, the after effects of their death happened to you,
Right. Yeah.
but the death itself had nothing to do with you. I mean, I didn't give my husband cancer,
Right.
that had nothing to do with me. What has to do with me is how I deal with it after.
Yeah.
And I've done things that I never would have done if he was still here. I got a tattoo, colored my hair purple. It's not who I was when I was with him.
Absolutely
It's
not.
who he knew.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't realize what you were doing here. I didn't realize what you were coming over here. Sorry, my son just ran over here and I'm like, leave me alone. He was trying to plug in my computer, so sorry about that. Well, sorry, I didn't know what you were doing. I saw you come over here and I was like, God.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's up there. But I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's easy in the beginning stages of grief. Yeah. It's easy to sometimes say, why did this happen to me? Why did, because that's our partner, that's our other half.
Yeah, you do take
like,
it personally.
Yeah, like, why did you take that person from me? And I, although, like I said, I haven't experienced that personally, I can comprehend how it would be to feel like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
Even with certain
Yeah,
other
it's not,
deaths, like,
it's
but
not,
it wasn't about me.
yeah, and it doesn't, it's not only widowed people that feel that.
Right. Someone who loses a parent, or
Mhm.
even a best friend or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I don't think I personally have experienced that. I don't think. I'm not gonna say.
Oh, you
Absolutely
mean where you feel it's personal? Why did?
yeah, I don't.
Well, you're not a victim
I
to
don't
the
think.
person. You
What's
don't
that?
you don't have a victim mentality.
That's
You
fair.
know, you wouldn't normally play the victim. You would say, okay, this happened to me, but I'm going to do this. You know,
Right, right.
you're more of a reactor
Yeah.
instead of a, I can't think of what the opposite of somebody who reacts, but
Maybe like an internalizer.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 And we can change, you know, you can
Yeah.
change from a mousy little scared of everything to somebody who takes chances. I mean, sometimes, and I don't mean, you know, bungee jumping. I mean, going to an event that you want to go to, but you don't know anybody there.
Yeah.
Actually taking the time to walk through that door. Because once you do, it's easy.
Yeah, because
It's
maybe because you're used to having that partner with you that goes with you places. You're an introvert. You're not used to doing it by yourself. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And because you know, if it was your husband or a best friend who always did things with you,
Yeah.
you know that if you don't know anybody else in the room, at least you have somebody to talk to.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, probably would have a good time, you know,
Yeah.
even not knowing anybody else. You can still do that. The
Yes.
hardest thing is walking through that door. No, actually, the hardest thing is leaving the house to go there. Once I'm in the car, you know, it's been decided for me. Not everybody's that way, but for me, yeah, once I get dressed and put my shoes on,
That's my husband. Yeah.
that's my
If I can,
commitment.
yeah. If I can get myself prepared and ready to go, then I can go and I can socialize. I'm excuse me. Um, I'm like I said, I'm a very social person. I can go anywhere and pretty much talk to anybody. Which is not always great because like yesterday, I had a client that I was going to alone. Usually for our commercial cleaning, I had my little employees. Well, not so much little, they're young adults and teenagers now. But I have my daughters, my employees who go with me. At least one goes everywhere with me. And so I'm like, wait, I have to go do this by myself. It wasn't a social situation, but I was like, I have to do this. I always have someone with me. Like,
Yeah,
so I was like, wait, I have to do this alone. It wasn't like there was other people there to meet and talk to, you know? So I can only imagine if it was just, you know, me, my spouse, my kids were older or didn't have kids or, you know, whatever. That person's gone and I have to do life like that. Like how I was like, I gotta go here by myself.
yeah.
I can't imagine having to suddenly do life by myself like that, you know?
For so long, if we're parents, for so long, our lives revolve around our children. We go to things because the child is, you know, we go to PTA meetings, we go to their little plays and things. You
Yeah.
know, do things and we meet other parents. Sometimes we become friends with the other parents, and sometimes it's just, you know, somebody to talk to when you're there.
Or yeah, like friendly with the parents.
Yeah. But then they get older. A lot of times once they hit high school, they're making different friends. They don't necessarily live close by. You're not meeting the parents as much. And so it's a little bit of that feeling even then. And then once they're gone, once they go off to college or, you know, get an apartment or something or get married and they're gone, your involvement in their life really narrows. And whether you've got your spouse or not, there's a little bit of that, okay, you stop doing things.
Yeah.
You know, you don't because you before you had a reason. I know that that's what it was with me. I had a reason for getting out of the house and for going places and doing things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a busy person. With 6 kids, you're busy. And they didn't do all the activities. They played basketball and kind of played around with the idea of, baseball was a big one in the summer. Played around with the idea of scouts. I had one that was real, he was seriously in
Yeah.
scouts, and then a couple of the others, they go to a meeting when they felt like it. But so we weren't super busy. They didn't
Right.
take gymnastics and all these, well,
That's kind of how we are. Yeah.
John did karate classes, but not all 6 at the same time were
Right.
places and doing things. So, but it was still, your social life kind of revolves around your kids for a long time.
Yeah.
Out of necessity, you generally friends with their friends' parents,
Yeah.
or your neighbors that have kids their age, and
Yeah.
and then that's gone. And if you lose your husband around the same time, that's a real blow. It's a real blow to your confidence.
Mhm.
Suddenly it's like, okay, I don't have a reason to leave the house. Maybe you work from home,
Yeah.
or maybe you don't have to work. Maybe he left you, good insurance or something, and you don't have to work. And so you're just home all day, and or you work, and your life goes from get up in the morning, go to work, come home, watch TV, go to bed, and then every day is the same.
Yeah.
Maybe one day a week you go to church.
Yeah.
And it's all, that's what happened to me, was every day was the same.
Mm.
And some people are fine with that. Some
Yeah.
people are okay with, not me.
I think some people feel a little more secure that way when
Yeah.
they know how things are going to go each day.
I started out by, we had lousy internet. We've got great internet now, but at the time we had lousy internet. And so I would leave the house and go sit in Starbucks for a couple hours, and work on my laptop, or I'd go to the library. I didn't necessarily interact with other humans, but I
Mm.
wasn't in my house.
Right.
There was
Right.
a
Right.
possibility of interacting with
Yeah.
people. And that little step, doing that a couple times a week, really kind of helped bring me out of my shell.
Yeah.
And then I got involved in some online business groups, and a couple times a month we'd have big, huge Zoom meetings, and everybody was supposed to talk. and so I got a little more comfortable with being on camera. Little baby steps.
Uh-huh.
Everybody just remember baby steps.
Yeah.
If you feel like you need to make a change, do it slowly. Don't jump in and suddenly become a social butterfly, unless
Right.
that's really who you are.
Right. Right.
And you're getting there. But I still think after the loss of somebody really close to you, it's kind of a reflex to cocoon.
Yes. Yes.
And when you're ready to come out of that cocoon, my suggestion is do it slowly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a butterfly does it slowly. Chicks, peck out of their eggs
Yeah.
slowly. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden it bursts and there
Yeah.
they are. They take little pieces, and
Take the time that's necessary for you.
yeah. Because if you do it all at once, you may become overwhelmed, and that's not good either.
I think the most important thing to remember to become and remain independent from your grief is do what's best for you in the way and time that it's best for you. But make sure that you take that time and that focus to put into yourself
Yes.
for your mental health and your grief process.
Yeah, definitely. Very definitely. I don't think I could have said it any better.
Well, you know, I
It
learned
sums
from
it all up, doesn't it? You know, take the time to know what you need. And if you sit and just kind of clear your mind a little bit, it'll come to you what you need to do next.
Yeah.
And how.
yeah. And sometimes just taking the time to sit down. Something that my my husband tells me a lot lately because I got a lot
Mhm.
we've got things we're trying to expand. I've got a lot going on. Sometimes he's like, hey, just sit down. It's fine. Sit down, take the time and focus.
Yeah.
But it's funny how not really how we met, but it's funny that we met when we did because I didn't know that when we met, I would be able to use you and your
You
kind of
mean when we met?
yeah, you and
Oh,
I met.
yeah. Yeah, I think the timing of it
didn't
was pretty good.
I didn't know at that time that I would need your kind of mentorship and friendship the way that I have come to because, my father hadn't passed yet and, things like that. And so I had grief that I was dealing with, but it wasn't till our first like personal conversation. I
Mhm.
think it was a recording, but it was that I was like, holy crap, like I haven't dealt with any of this. And I don't know that I would have, like my husband has said things and, certain things, but I think people close to me just kind of try to like balance what they say,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. Uh, but it wasn't until we had our first conversation that I was like, holy crap, like I haven't processed nearly anything that I should be processing or even really dove into this journey like I should.
I tell it like it is. I don't pull any punches. And I'm gonna, I tell people grief sucks.
Yeah.
It hurts. Like,
Yeah.
ow.
If you're doing it right, it hurts.
Yeah. And in my group, they asked me, are you gonna make us cry today? And I never apologize, for asking the hard questions or making them remember something
Yeah.
because they're processing.
Yeah.
If they're crying, they're feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they need to feel. And
Yeah.
sometimes I know one person, the only time they cry is in the group. And
Really?
I doubt very, very much that they cry outside of the group because they feel safe in the group. They know they know that others are going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent so many years like intentionally not feeling feelings for a few reasons
Yeah.
that now I tear up over the most ridiculous. I'm like, really? This? Come on. But like, I'm actually feeling feelings now. So
I think I told you this, the Disney movie Encanto.
yeah.
I cried from the beginning to the end for all different reasons throughout it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, I never cried. I was tissues and blowing my nose and, just the whole thing. It was a great movie.
Yeah.
It has such a great message, that everybody has their own magic. And you don't always know what it is. You don't always see
Yeah.
it, but others can see it in you. And you have to allow that. And like, I knew it, but I didn't personalize it. I personalized it with that movie for
Yeah.
some reason. I
Well, I think
really
you found yours.
identified. Yeah, I really identified with it. And yeah, I've always felt that everybody has a gift.
Mhm.
But I had no idea what mine was. I really didn't. I thought, okay, it's raising kids.
Yeah.
Well, you talk to some of them and maybe I wasn't such a great mother. Depends on the day, what they're remembering.
I get it. I get it. Or what year it was,
Yeah.
you know?
I would love to know, we sit around and we'll every once in a while tell a funny story about my husband. The kids will say something. We still make fun of him with when he gives directions. When he gave directions, he will tell you 5 different ways to get there. And by the time he was done, you had no idea where you were going. So I used to always tell him, just tell me the easiest way to get there. I don't care if it's the fastest or the slowest, just the easiest,
Yeah.
fewest turns.
Yeah.
And so he would do that for me because I'd say that,
Yeah.
but other people didn't, and he would just expand. So we tell, stories like that. And I want to know what they're going to say about me when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't.
I've had like 1 year, my kids wrote me the cards. My kids and my husband, and like index cards.
Mhm.
And they just wrote a bunch of stuff on it about me and to me. And I was like, I mean, my kids are really sweet. They're very, we're very close. They're very open. So I know they love me. And I know that I've expressed my kind of disappointment with certain points of my past as a parent. And they're like, first of all, don't effing talk about yourself like that. Like, you're fabulous. So that's kind of something too to, like, think about. It's good to kind of look inward to yourself and say, okay, what kind of person am I? What are people going to remember about me, right? But I think sometimes too, when it comes to grief, we may kind of engulf ourselves in that negativity. Oh, these are all the things I did wrong. These are all the things I said that I shouldn't have said, and all these kind of things. And it's important to kind of not stick yourself there too.
Yeah, and to think, oh, I didn't
They're
handle
not here.
the
They can't tell you
situation.
anyway.
Yeah, I didn't handle, you remember an argument or something that you had. I didn't handle that situation well. Well, you know what? It's in the past.
It's in the past. You can't change it. So
Exactly.
just do better
I'm
in the future if that's how you feel,
I'm pretty pragmatic. It's like, you can't change it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't always that way. I can't think of the word I want, but I would take something and it would be in my head. I couldn't sleep at night because I'd be thinking about it. And then I finally done, usually it was about money, and like it's 2 o'clock in the morning and that's all I'm thinking about. And finally one day it hit me. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it at this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll worry about it in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
Problem solved. I didn't have any trouble falling asleep after that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do self-talk pretty good. I can talk myself up, but I can also talk myself down. And that's dangerous.
It's never beneficial. Never.
No,
It's never beneficial.
I spent a lot of my life being negative about myself and the life in general.
Yeah.
My husband brought out the embrace the moment kind of thing in me. And I don't allow negativity to touch me.
That's good.
It's
Yeah.
just, if somebody has something negative to say, I'll listen. If it's important or if they need to talk to somebody, I'll listen.
Yeah.
But I'll also try to help them reframe it and think more positively about whatever the situation is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes is somebody else to look at something from, a different angle.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
oh, I didn't see it that way.
Perspective. We all have a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let us know where we can find you, and then goodbye.
Um, if you go to cindyjburns.com/journal, you'll get a free grief journal.
Ooh, I'm gonna download
And-
that today. Thank you.
And you can find me. I'm Cindy Judd Burns on Facebook, so you can send me a message on Messenger, and those two are probably the best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay.
If you want to
Sounds
send me an email, it's cindyjburns.com.
All right. Well, as always, thank you for being here, and
Thank you
thank
for
you.
having me.
Thank you for being here for the podcast, but for me too. You've been super helpful, and I highly recommend Cindy's coaching services. And yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
That means a lot. All right, you have a good day.
You too.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye.
If anyone has questions to ask, answer, or topics to discuss, you can leave that on our Facebook page, Just the Who of Us Podcast, or email me directly, Rhea, REAHDR, at Philolity, FALOLITY.net. Visit philolity.net, that's FALOLITY.net, to order your own workbook copies, ask questions, get information, and more.